Kim, I heard the other day a new term, childcare desert. Could you tell us what that is?
Absolutely, Nikki. Childcare deserts is the result of a report that was done by the Victoria University. And what it is it's a study around the number of places available for children accessing early education and care, as opposed to the number of places available. What we have in the Illawarra and Shoalhaven area at the moment is that for every 3 children, we have 1 available early childhood education and care place. So that means that children from birth to 5 are missing out on access to high quality education and care in those very first 5 years that are vital for brain development. What it also means is that families are unable to return to paid or voluntary work, so they're unable to maximise their opportunities for paid employment.
So a childcare desert impacts children, it impacts parents, it impacts grandparents, no doubt, and it impacts the whole of community. I'm Nikki Sloan and I'm CEO of Community Industry Group, and I'm coming to you today from the beautiful lands of the Dharawal people, bringing you Community Matters, the podcast that explores community solutions with people who are making a difference in the community. And today I'm being joined by Kim Bettino, who is the CEO of a fabulous not-for-profit early childhood education provider, Big Fat Smile. Welcome, Kim.
Thank you, Nikki. It's a pleasure to be here.
We talked about childcare deserts. Could you just tell our listeners a little bit about the scope of the problem and why it's such a pressing area of concern?
I think this problem has been brought about by many years of, lack of investment in capital funding to build new services. And so organisations like ours, Big Fat Smile, where we're a not-for-profit organisation, and we've had limited ability to access capital funding, which would allow us to open new services. We've got very extensive waiting lists at many of our services, so we know the demand's there. So that's one key factor. I think the other factor has been our workforce. We know through COVID that we were hit with workforce challenges. We had a number of teachers and educators leave the sector. And so what we're seeing is that we are unable to attract those workers over the last 5 years.
So we know a bit about the challenges. Can you tell us about any solutions and what have you seen that's been effective in addressing that?
Look, we were so excited last year in the May federal budget when the government announced a worker retention payment. As an organisation, we decided to join the multi-employee bargaining group because we really felt strongly about that early childhood teachers and educators deserved a professional wage for the work that they do. So we joined the multi-employee bargaining and the agreement was signed last year, and we were able to give our teachers and educators a 10% wage increase in December last year. They will also receive another 5% in December in 2025. So that's a really exciting time. For a teacher that's working full-time, that's around $150 extra per week.
Wow.
And for an educator with a Cert 3 or diploma, it's about $100 a week. So that's a real difference in people's pay packets each week. And a really good news story was when I was out at one of my centres recently, an educator said to me, "Oh, Kim, thank you so much. That pay rise has made such a difference for me." And she told me that she's thinking about giving up her weekend job because she's now able to have that extra money in her pocket. And, for me, that means that she's really able to go to work refreshed on a Monday morning and be the best teacher and educator she can be for those children in that centre.
Fantastic. Because they absolutely deserve to have a life outside of work. And has it made a difference in terms of recruitment? Have you noticed any difference there?
We have noticed a difference. Since June last year when the announcement was made, we've seen a 60% increase in the number of applications for roles across the organisation, and we have the lowest employee turnover since post-COVID, which to me that's a really strong data metric that shows that the worker retention payment actually works.
Wow. There we go. It actually works. However, you were telling me that there is another barrier to employment in this area, and it's something we've talked about with other guests, is the housing affordability in our region.
Yes, Nikki, it is a real issue for us. We had 3 different scenarios last year where we'd offered teachers and educators 3 roles. They'd accepted those roles, and then they had to turn around and not accept them because they weren't able to access affordable housing or even housing in general. So that is a real issue. You know, we've got vacancies in our services where we're not filling them to capacity because we can't attract the workers that we need. And here's three teachers or educators that we weren't able to bring to the region.
Yeah. So it's another example of how other issues are impacting childcare deserts, because you have ratios, do you not? So if you don't have the teachers that you need, you can't open up the childcare places that could be available.
That's exactly right. So you add in the deserts report and in the Illawarra Shoalhaven we have 3 children per place, and then if you factor in that we're not opening our services to capacity, it's actually greater than 3 children. So it is a significant impact in the community, and it's something that we're really calling out to government to help us find solutions, find ways that we can develop services and centres right across communities.
And what do you think some of those solutions could be? If you had a listener now who could make a difference, what do you think some of those solutions could be?
Oh, capital funding is probably top of my list at the moment. As a not-for-profit organisation, you know, we don't have capital. We run as a surplus, but we need to reinvest back in the business. So having access to capital where we could work in partnerships, like with local government, to develop services, you know, even repurpose existing services that were built 40 odd years ago that, you know, we could perhaps relocate and build a bigger service. They're the types of solutions we need because, at the end of the day, we need more places for children.
Absolutely. And you've touched on something that at Community Industry Group we talk about a lot. Capital investment in not-for-profits is actually investment in community, because you, as not-for-profits, you build more facilities, you build your balance sheet. Your balance sheet enables you to borrow more money, then you can build more facilities. And because you exist only for your community, you're going to invest that money locally. So it's capital funding is such such an ongoing kind of solution to a problem.
And we know that is solvable. You know, we've seen in the past where there has been capital funding for not-for-profit entities and they've been able to grow and develop. So it's not a solution that we know doesn't work. And so I think, you know, we've been advocating to government, both at a federal and state level, to really kind of look at this deserts report, look at where we need places for children and support those communities to thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, when I think about how Big Fat Smile has grown over its 44
years.
Yeah. It's a great example of how you have invested in your own community.
We started as a organisation working out of a shed at the back of a centre at Warrawong. And now we're, you know, a large organisation with 36 services, and we run a whole lot of community programs, you know, interesting community programs for children and families that are unable to access a preschool place in this area.
Right.
So we've tapped into that need as well, because we know the value of good quality, high quality education for young children is so important.
It sounds like you're coming up with lots of other ways of addressing this lack of childcare places.
We are, Nikki, and we are trying to find solutions, because when you've got parents ringing or coming into centres every day desperate for education and care, you need to do something about it. So Last year we opened a new 20-place preschool in one of our existing long daycare settings.
Right.
We had a very large outdoor space that we were able to put in a new build in there, and so we were able to expand that service. Those 20 places were filled within a week.
Mm.
So it really shows you that there's absolute demand in our communities.
Which is a shining example of how you're reinvesting, you're using your own capital and reinvesting in your own community.
That's right. We funded that ourselves as an organisation.
And what about other services for families who perhaps can't access care?
So one of our community playgroups that operates out of a neighbourhood community centre is there for families to be able to bring their children along. We have our educators there to set the environment up for children and families, do modelling around how to play with children and to really give visibility to how children learn through play. We also have extended a drop-in service in the afternoon for older school children. And as a result of that, because we could see that there were children that weren't actually accessing appropriate care after school, that we're actually looking at establishing a formal after-school care program at the local school.
What a wonderful example of responding to community need and a not-for-profit stepping up when there's a need to be filled.
And I think it just goes back to our core values around every child matters.
Mm. You've been working in this area for some time. I'd love you to share with our listeners what you've learned through your work and what could inspire other people into this sector.
I think what motivates me and many of my colleagues is we know the difference that we make for children. We know that the brain development of children in the first 5 years is the greatest it will ever be in our life. Mm-hmm. And so to set children up for success, there's nothing better than that. And I was out at a service recently and I was giving a teacher a 25-year service award that she'd been at this service for that period of time. And I noticed that there was a young man standing there with the children, and I went up to him and introduced myself, and he told us that he'd just started as a trainee. And I said, "That's amazing. You know, what motivated you for this role?" And he said, "That was my teacher that taught me at this centre." I mean, how great is that?
Yeah, that is a lovely story. And speaking of stories, this podcast is called Community Matters. Could you tell us about a person or people in this community that matter to you?
Well, I think first and foremost, children matter. And that's what keeps driving me to be in the profession and to do the work that we do. As I've said before, Nikki, it does make a difference. And we've got so much evidence that points to the difference for children, particularly those children that are experiencing disadvantage or vulnerability. The difference that it can make when they access high quality education is insurmountable. And so we've really got to get it right for all children, not just those that are privileged enough to be able to access a service, but for every child in our communities deserve the best possible education and the best possible start to their learning journey.
Oh, I don't think we could have a better statement that all children deserve the best start to their learning journey. Thank you so much for that. Thank you for coming in today, Kim, and to talking to us about, well, childcare deserts, but actually really the importance of early childhood education and care and the quality of not-for-profit organisations and the difference you're making. Thank you so much. You are really making a difference in this community. And thank you for joining us on Community Matters. Please like and share this episode, and don't forget to tune in again when we talk to more people who are making a difference in our community.